Hello students, in this video we are going to discuss about the salient features of the Constitution of United Kingdom. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, commonly known as the United Kingdom or Britain. It is a sovereign country located off the northwestern coast of the European mainland. The United Kingdom includes the island of Great Britain, the northeastern part of the island of Ireland, and many smaller islands. Northern Ireland shares a long border with the Republic of Ireland. Otherwise, the United Kingdom is surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean with the North Sea to the east, the English Channel to the south, and the Celtic Sea to the southwest, giving it the 12th longest coastal line in the world. Now we are going to see about the salient features of the Constitution of UK in detail. First, partly written and partly unwritten. The first important feature of the British Constitution is its unwritten character. But by unwritten, we do not mean that none of its principles is written. There are several written parts of the British Constitution like the Magna Carta, Bill of Rights, Reform Acts, Parliamentary Act of 1911, etc. But the unwritten part is heavier than the written one. So, by unwritten, we mean that the written part of the British Constitution is lesser than the unwritten one. The written part was not written at one time, and whenever an act was made, the purpose was not to improve the whole of the Constitution. The British Constitution is largely based upon the customs and conventions of the British society. Next feature is, it is an evolutionary one. The British Constitution is a child of wisdom and chance. It has evolved itself gradually, expressing itself in different characters, charters, statutes, precedents, usages, and traditions. It has grown like an organism from age to age. It is the oldest among existing constitutions. Its general framework has undergone no revolutionary overhauling for at least the past 3 centuries, with the exception of the half dozen years in which Oliver Cromwell served as the protector of the Commonwealth. Difference between theory and practice. One of the unique features of the British Constitution is the gap that exists between constitutional theory and governmental practices. In England, nothing is what it seems to be, or seems to be what it is. In theory, the government of England is vested in the Crown. All officers of government are the servants of the Crown, summoned and dismissed at the royal discretion. No law is effective without the Crown's consent. No appointment is ever made save in the name of the Crown. No parliamentary election can be held save in obedience to the King's writ. The King is the commander-in-chief of all the British forces. The King alone can declare war and conclude peace and treaties. It is the Royal Navy, His Majesty's judges, His Majesty's government, His Majesty's loyal opposition, and even His Majesty's subjects. In short, the King is the source of all power. But all this is theory. As the author Egg remarks, the government of the United Kingdom is an ultimate theory, absolute monarchy in form, a limited constitutional monarchy, and in actual character, democratic republic. In practice, the king has become merely a figurehead. He reigns but does not rule. Though gradual stages, all political power has shifted from the king to the people's representatives in parliament. The king has now long ceased to be a directing factor in government, and he virtually performs no official acts on his own initiative. Practice has quite overturned theory, and as Og marks, there have been come to be, in a sense, two constitutions rather than one, the constitution that represents the system as it is supposed to be, and the constitution that represents as it actually is. The truth is that the king, if he acts at all, acts only through ministers. England has become today not only a limited monarchy, but, to use the phrase of Mr. and Mrs. Whipps, a crowned republic. The next one, parliamentary sovereignty. The sovereignty of Parliament forms another important feature of the British Constitution. There is no law which the British Parliament cannot make or unmake. No court can question the legality of its acts. There is no legal difference between the constituent authority and lawmaking authority in England as it exists in the United States or India. The British Parliament is both the lawmaking and constituent authority. It can even change the succession to the throne by a simple act and even prohibit the king to marry a woman of his choice. It can abolish the monarchy, deprive all peace of seats in the House of Lords, or abolish that chamber altogether. It can, in fact, do any or all of a score of other things that would amaze any student of the British Constitution. It can observe and, I quote, make laws protecting wild birds or shellfish, and with the same procedure could break the connections of church and state, or give political power to 2 millions of citizens and redistribute it among new constituencies, unquote. The British Parliament has done all these things and even more. So, the British Parliament is supreme and sovereign. Then, a unitary constitution. The British Constitution is a unitary and not a federal one. A federal constitution is one wherein the governmental powers are distributed among certain agencies, federal and divisional, neither of which has a power to alter the constitutional provisions. The important thing is that the distribution is done by authority superior to both federal and divisional governments. The United States has a federal constitution, but in England, the government is unitary. All the power is concentrated in a single government centered at London. The local areas derive their powers from the London government. It has endowed them with such powers as it chooses to bestow and can change their powers at any time or even abolish them altogether. Thus, the British Constitution is unitary both in form and spirit. Next one, a flexible constitution. Again, the British Constitution is flexible in nature. As already pointed out, there is no difference between the procedure for a constitutional law and that of an ordinary law in England. The British Parliament is empowered to pass and amend the ordinary law as well as the constitutional law through the same ordinary procedure. There is no special procedure for passing a constitutional law in England. This flexibility of the Constitution permits it to be adapted more readily to the new conditions than is possible in any other country. England has a parliamentary form of government as distinct from the presidential type of government. The king is the nominal head of the state. The real functionaries are the ministers who belong to the majority party in the House of Commons, and they remain in office so long as they enjoy its confidence. As the ministers are also the members of the parliament, so there is coordination between the executive and legislative wings of the government. In the words of Begot, an author, "The cabinet in England is a, I quote, hygiene that joins and the buckle that binds the executive and the legislative departments together," unquote. In England, there is a little risk of conflict between the executive and legislature, and the work of the government therefore goes on smoothly. Montesquieu found the British government structure based on the principle of separation of powers. Apparently, it is so. The Crown is the executive, Parliament is the legislature, the courts form the judiciary. The executive, in its purely executive and administrative capacity, is not subject to so much control by the legislature as it is in the United States. In England, the judiciary also takes no part in determining the law, as does the American judiciary through the process of judicial review. Nevertheless, the cabinet in England has assumed a dominating role not only in administration but even in legislation and to some extent in judiciary as well. In the United States, the role of the cabinet is not so dominating as it is in England. The British cabinet has become the steering wheel of the ship of state, reducing Parliament to a tool in its hands. A blend of monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. The British Constitution has harmoniously blended within itself the three somewhat incongruous features of monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. The British king represents the monarchy, which rests on the hereditary principle. The House of Lords is aristocratic, representing the lords and nobles of the land. The House of Commons is democratic, representing the people of the land. It is true that neither the king nor the House of Lords plays an effective role in the political setup of the country. Yet, their continuance appears hardly reconcilable with democracy. A bicameral legislature. The Parliament is bicameral. The House of Commons, the lower house, is directly elected chamber. House of Lords is a hereditary chamber. The lower house is much more powerful than the House of Lords. Thank you.